Everyone in the galaxy cowered in fear of Iridian weapons, but not humans, never humans. Captain Benjamin Scorer watched the sleek Iridian warship filling the viewscreen. The YSS Imperator. Somewhere aboard that massive ship, Commander Korvac was preparing to make demands, to threaten, to posture. The Gamma Crucis system belonged to the Iridians now, a resource-rich prize they had claimed. Scorer's ship, the TSS Odyssey, was trespassing according to galactic law. Korvac's scarred blue face appeared on the viewscreen. Your immediate and unconditional surrender, Captain Scorer, or we vaporize you with our superior Iridian weapons. Humanity will fight to the last man, Scorer said. He smirked. Iridians always underestimated humans. Prepare for battle. 3-1, they outgun us, Lieutenant Commander Mikhail Petrov said from the tactical console. Odyssey has Terran shields and mass drivers, and human guts, Scorer replied. Today we fight for this system, for humanity's presence in this sector. This wasn't posturing or heroic bravado. It was cold necessity. Scorer knew if the Iridians destroyed or captured Odyssey here, the Terran Space Force's foothold in this sector would crumble. Gamma Crucis's resources could fuel Iridian conquest across 100 systems. Millions would be conquered and suffer. No, it all ended here or began here. Scorer gripped the armrests of his command chair. One ship against one ship. Iridian weapons against Terran weapons. Alien aggression against human defiance. The viewscreen erupted in blinding flashes as the Imperator unleashed a swarm of plasma torpedoes. They streaked towards the Odyssey, glowing with deadly intent. Sato's hands flew over the controls. The Odyssey banked sharply, the inertial dampeners straining to compensate. The torpedoes screamed past, near misses that rattled the hull. Return fire, all mass drivers, Scorer ordered. The Odyssey shuddered as the powerful kinetic weapons launched. Depleted uranium slugs accelerated to a fraction of light speed, slammed into the Iridian ship's energy shields. Flares of plasma marked each impact. The Imperator's shields flickered, struggling to repel the barrage. On the viewscreen, Korvac's eyes widened. He leaned forward, mandibles clenched. Intensify forward firepower. I don't want anything left of that human ship. The Imperator's particle beams lanced out, searing through the Odyssey's weakened shields. Sparks flew from overloaded consoles. Crew members cried out as the ship lurched. Shields down to 30%, Petrov reported, frantically rerouting power. Hull breaches on decks 7 and 12. Scorer gripped his armrests tighter, knuckles whitening. He locked eyes with Korvac's image. Neither captain blinked, neither yielded. Lieutenant Ivanov, Scorer called out, target their particle beam emitters. Aye, sir. Ivanov hunched over his targeting display, fingers flying. With calm precision amidst the chaos, he unleashed the railguns. 2 high-velocity slugs found their marks. Explosions blossomed on the Imperator's hull as the particle beam emitters crumpled, debris spiraling into space. The Imperator and Odyssey circled each other, trading shots, engines straining. The Odyssey took hit after hit, alarms blaring, damage reports flooding in, but Sato kept them in the fight, skating the ragged edge between bold maneuvers and suicidal risks. Petrov and the damage control teams worked miracles, keeping vital systems from failing completely. Korvac roared orders to his crew, his composure cracking. Scorer remained focused, intense, mind-racing, searching for a chance, an opening, a way to end this. The Odyssey's shields guttered on the brink of collapse. One more hit would finish them. Scorer made a decision. Ensign Sato, he said, his voice cutting through the din. Set collision course with the Imperator, flank speed. Sato hesitated only a fraction of a second. Aye, Captain. The Odyssey surged forward, drives blazing, arrowing straight for the Iridian ship. Korvac rocked back in his chair, disbelief and dread warring on his face. At the last possible second, he stabbed a button. Fire EMP missiles, full spread. The missiles launched, racing ahead of the Odyssey. They detonated in blinding white flashes, mere meters from the Imperator's hull. Lightning crackled over the Iridian ship as the electromagnetic pulse fried systems and overloaded circuits. The shields vanished, and running lights went dark. Romanov, take point. Kowalski, Zhang, flank left. Petrov, Singh, right side. Suppressing fire on my mark, Skora ordered, his voice steady over comms. The Imperator's interior was bathed in emergency lighting, the EMP attack having wreaked havoc. Debris and bodies of Iridian crew littered the corridors. At Skora's signal, the breach pod slammed into the crippled ship's hull. Shaped charges blew the airlocks, atmosphere venting in explosive decompression. Romanov was first through the breach, his powered armor absorbing incoming plasma bolts. His return fire cut down 2 Iridians as they emerged into a corridor. The ship shook as the Marines pushed deeper, leapfrogging cover, pouring precise plasma fire into defenders. Alien blood splattered bulkheads. Skora advanced with controlled fury, his prototype railgun punching fist-sized holes through Iridian armor. An explosion rocked the ship. The Iridians were trying to scuttle it. Zhang, seal that bulkhead. Petrov, Kowalski, hold this junction. Romanov, Singh, with me to the bridge. They battled through to the bridge's massive blast doors. Romanov planted a breach charge. The explosion tore them open, revealing Korvac and his guard. "Surrender, human scum!" Korvac snarled, energy blade igniting. "I was about to say the same to you," Skora replied, leveling his railgun. Korvac lunged. Skora sidestepped and grabbed the Iridian sword arm. Bones snapped. The blade clattered away and Skora's boot pinned Korvac. "Surrender," Skora demanded, railgun aimed. "Now." Korvac glared, then glanced to his guards, all dead or subdued by the Marines. He closed his eyes in bitter defeat. "I surrender, human. This ship is yours." With the Iridian commander subdued and restrained, Skora and his team swept the bridge, securing any remaining resistance. Romanov and Singh took up guard positions at the entrance, plasma rifles at the ready. Skora moved to the command console, his fingers flying over the controls as he accessed the ship's systems. "Captain, you need to see this," Petrov called out, his voice tight with tension. Skora joined him at another console, his eyes widening as he took in the schematics on the screen. "The Starbreaker," Skora breathed, a mix of awe and horror in his voice. The weapon's design was unlike anything he had seen before, harnessing the power of miniature black holes to unleash destruction on a planetary scale. "They were planning to use this monstrosity to conquer and subjugate," Petrov said, disgust etched on his features. Skora's jaw clenched, his resolve hardening. "Not on my watch. Romanov, Singh, secure the Starbreaker data and any other intel you can find. We can't let this fall into the wrong hands." As the Marines set to work, Skora opened a comm channel to the Odyssey. "Sato, we've secured the bridge and captured Korvac, but there's more. The Iridians have a planet-killer weapon called the Starbreaker. We're sending you the data now." Sato's voice crackled over the comm. "Understood, Captain. We'll analyze the data and inform Terran Command immediately." Skora turned to his team. "Romanov, take half the squad and escort the prisoners and the Starbreaker data back to the Odyssey. I'll lead the rest of us to the engine room. We need to disable this ship before it can reach its destination." Romanov nodded, already moving to carry out the orders. As he organized his men, a sudden commotion erupted near the command console. Korvac, having broken free from his restraints, lunged at Skora with a primal roar. The two adversaries clashed in a whirlwind of strikes and counterstrikes, their combat prowess on full display. Korvac's strength was formidable, his blows hammering against Skora's defenses, but the human captain refused to yield, retaliating with precise strikes aimed at the Iridian's vital points. The bridge became a battlefield within a battlefield as the Marines engaged Korvac's newly freed guards. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air, scorching bulkheads and consoles. The acrid smell of burnt circuitry filled the space. Skora and Korvac fought their way across the bridge, smashing through consoles and equipment. Korvac seized a jagged piece of metal, wielding it like a crude blade. Skora ducked and weaved, his armor deflecting glancing blows. In a sudden burst of speed, Korvac caught Skora off guard. his improvised weapon finding a gap in the captain's armor. The serrated edge tore into Scora's side, drawing a grunt of pain from the human. Scora staggered back, one hand pressed to the wound. Korvac pressed his advantage, raining down blows with relentless fury. Scora's vision blurred, his strength waning as blood seeped through his fingers. But as Korvac raised his makeshift blade for the killing stroke, a plasma bolt seared the air, striking the Iridian's shoulder. Korvac roared in pain, the weapon clattering from his grasp. Sergeant Major Romanov, his armor scorched and battered, advanced with his rifle leveled. Korvac lunged for cover as Romanov unleashed a barrage of shots. Consoles exploded and smoke filled the bridge. Scora dragged himself to shelter, one hand clamped over his bleeding wound. "Captain!" Romanov shouted over the chaos. "We need to move!" Scora gritted his teeth and pushed himself upright. Pain lanced through his side, but he forced it aside. The mission came first. "To the engine room," he ordered. Romanov and the surviving Marines formed up around Scora, laying down suppressing fire as they fought their way off the bridge. Iridian resistance intensified with every deck they descended. Plasma bolts filled the corridors, bulkheads melted and ran like wax. At a junction, Scora's team ran into a wall of Iridian defenders. A vicious firefight erupted, both sides pouring fire into the choke point. Marines fell, their dying screams echoing. "Flashbang out!" Romanov hurled the grenade. The detonation left Iridian soldiers reeling. Scora and his men surged forward, cutting them down. They reached the engine room, a cavernous space dominated by massive plasma reactors. Scora's team fanned out, planting breaching charges at key structural points. The Iridians fought frantically to stop them. Scora felt his strength waning, his blood loss taking its toll. But he pushed forward, covering his men, his railgun barking. They were so close. A familiar roar cut through the din. Korvac and his elite guard stormed into the engine room, energy blades flashing. They crashed into the Marines in a whirlwind of slashing strikes. Scora saw his men falling, saw Korvac cutting a path straight towards him, alien eyes blazing with murderous intent. With a defiant shout, Scora charged to meet him. They collided like battling demons, Korvac's blade sizzling against Scora's armor. Scora lashed out with armored fists, beating the Iridian back. Korvac's guards tried to intervene, but Romanov and the remnants of the squad kept them at bay. Scora and Korvac grappled, smashing through equipment, neither giving quarter. Korvac's superior strength began to tell. He forced Scora to his knees, hands locked around the human's throat. But Scora fought on, instinct and training taking over. He drove a thumb into Korvac's eye. As the Iridian reeled back, Scora surged upward, smashing his forehead into Korvac's face. Bone crunched. Scora pressed his advantage, raining down blows, targeting Iridian weak points with merciless precision. Korvac's defenses crumbled, his movements slowed. With a final devastating strike, Scora knocked Korvac senseless. The Iridian slumped to the deck, out cold. "Charges set!" Romanov called out. They ran, half-carrying their wounded, fighting every step. The timer on the charges counted inexorably down. Plasma bolts hounded their retreat. Iridian soldiers dogged their heels, but Scora's men held the line, their blood buying precious seconds. At last they reached the boarding craft. Scora all but fell through the hatch. "Punch it!" The craft blasted free of the Iridian ship. Seconds later, the charges detonated. A series of explosions ripped through the Imperator's engines. Gouts of flame vented into space. The massive ship lurched and began to drift, escape pods jettisoning from its sides. As the Odyssey's boarding craft docked, Captain Scora staggered out, one hand pressed to his bleeding side. Medics rushed forward, but he waved them off. "Korvac," he growled, "get that bastard to the brig. Maximum security." Romanov and Petrov dragged the battered Iridian commander away, his head lolling. Scora turned to Sato. "Damage report." "Shields at 20%, Captain. Hull breach is sealed, but we've lost long-range comms." Scora's reply was cut off by a klaxon. "Proximity alert," Ivanov called out. "Multiple warp signatures. It's a whole damned Iridian fleet." On screen, the view screen filled with angular Iridian warships, a vast armada that dwarfed the Odyssey, and at its heart, a truly massive dreadnought. Skora's blood ran cold. He knew that ship, the Vindicator, flagship of Admiral Zaxor, Korvac's superior, and the architect of Iridian conquest. Zaxor's image replaced the fleet. His black carapace gleamed and cybernetic eyes glowed baleful red. When he spoke, his voice was a rasping snarl. "Captain Skora, you have something of mine. Return Commander Korvac and surrender your vessel immediately." Skora straightened, ignoring the pain. "Korvac is a prisoner of war, and Odyssey doesn't surrender." Zaxor leaned forward, his gaze boring into Skora. "You face the might of the Iridian Empire, human. I have 3 dreadnoughts, 20 cruisers, and uncounted fighters. You have 1 damaged ship." A chill ran through Skora, but he kept his face impassive. If Zaxor was telling the truth, that he couldn't let the Iridians keep that weapon. "This sector is under Terran protection," Skora said. "Leave now and there need be no further bloodshed." Zaxor barked a harsh laugh. "You're in no position to make demands." His gaze turned evaluating. "But perhaps we can reach an arrangement. You have data on our starbreakers. We want it back." "Axiom Prime," Skora said abruptly. "1 standard hour. We'll negotiate there." Zaxor's eyes narrowed. Axiom Prime was known for its strict neutrality. Its automated defense grids would vaporize any ship that violated its non-aggression laws. An attack there would be suicide. "Agreed," the Admiral growled after a long moment. "But if you try anything human, I will burn your worlds." The screen went dark. Skora slumped back, mind racing. He needed to buy time to get the Starbreaker intel back to Terran Command. He hit the intercom. "Romanov, Petrov, Sato, meet me in the briefing room. We have a plan to make." An hour later, Skora's pinnace set down on Axiom Prime. Towering crystal spires glittered beneath an emerald sky, and representatives of 100 species thronged the landing pads. But Skora had eyes only for the Iridian delegation. Zaxor waited, flanked by hulking guards in powered armor. Korvac was with them, hands bound. Skora strode forward, Romanov and Petrov at his shoulders. He carried no visible weapons. Axiom Prime's laws were clear. "Admiral Zaxor, I'm here as agreed." "The data," Zaxor demanded, "and the commander." "Peace first," Skora countered. "Let's talk terms." Zaxor's guards tensed. Skora felt Romanov and Petrov ready themselves. The air crackled with tension. The Admiral's cybernetic eyes flashed. "We talk with blood." It happened in a heartbeat. Korvac dove sideways as Zaxor's guards opened fire. Disruptor bolts sizzled through the air. But Skora was already moving. He hit the deck and rolled, microfilament blades springing from his sleeves. Romanov and Petrov scattered, compact pulse rifles leaping into their hands. Screams tore the air as civilians fled. Skora came up firing, the microblades scything through a guard's armor like paper. Romanov dropped 2 more with tight 3-round bursts. Zaxor roared, his own blade igniting in a blaze of plasma. He lunged at Skora, murder in his eyes. Their blades clashed in a spray of sparks. Romanov and Petrov laid down covering fire, driving the guards back. But more were pouring from the Iridian shuttle. They needed to break contact, get back to their ship. Skora locked blades with Zaxor, servos whining in his armor as he strained against the Iridian's immense strength. Zaxor's mandibles twisted in a vicious smile. "This is the end for you, human." Skora's reply was a headbutt that cracked the Admiral's exoskull. Zaxor reeled and Skora kicked him back. "Romanov, Petrov, move." They fell back, fighting for every meter. Korvac had vanished in the chaos. Escaped, Skora thought grimly. Bolts crisscrossed around them, shattering crystal and stone. At last they reached the pinnace. Petrov lunged for the controls as Romanov and Skora held the hatch. Disruptors hammered their armor, alarms shrieking. The pinnace lurched skyward, AG drives screaming. Skora caught a final glimpse of Zaxor, the Admiral's face contorted with rage. Then they were away, streaking for the stars, but Skora knew it was far from over. Zaxor would be coming, and this time he wouldn't stop until Earth itself burned. Skora's mind raced as the pinnace streaked away from Axiom Prime. Zaxor's threat hung heavy in the air. The Iridian Admiral would stop at nothing to reclaim Korvac and unleash the Starbreaker. Back aboard the Odyssey, Skora gathered his officers. "We need to find Zaxor before he can activate that weapon. Ivanov, scan for any Iridian comm chatter. Sato, plot a course to the nearest Iridian stronghold." The bridge became a hive of activity. Ivanov hunched over his console, fingers flying as he sifted through a barrage of intercepted signals. Sato charted jump vectors, searching for the fastest route into enemy territory. Hours ticked by. Skora paced the bridge, his wounds throbbing beneath hastily applied bandages. Every second brought Zaxor closer to his goal. "Captain!" Ivanov's voice cut through the tension. "I've got something. A heavily encrypted transmission from a Iridian space station deep in their home sector." Skora leaned over Ivanov's shoulder, narrowing as he studied the data. The transmission carried Zaxor's command codes, and there, buried in the signal, coordinates. The Odyssey leaped into warp, engines straining as it hurtled towards Iridian space. Skora called Romanov and Petrov to the ready room. "We need a plan," he said as they entered. "That station will be heavily defended, shielded, sensor nets to detect any approach." "Agreed," Skora said, "but there might be another way." He zoomed in on a docking bay near the station's equator. "Iridian shuttles dock here to resupply. If we could infiltrate one of those—" "Exactly." Skora's gaze hardened. "It's our best shot at getting aboard undetected." "And then what?" Romanov asked. "Even if we get inside, we'll be outnumbered 100-1. And we split up. Skora brought up a cross-section of the station's interior. "Romanov, you'll lead a team to the power core. Plant charges. Be ready to blow it on my signal. Meanwhile, Petrov and I will head for the command center." Skora's finger stabbed at the schematic. "That's where they'll be controlling the Starbreaker, where we'll find Zaxor and Korvac." Petrov checked the charge on his pulse rifle. "When do we start?" Skora's smile was cold. "Now!" The infiltration went smoothly at first. Skora's team captured a Iridian shuttle and bluffed their way aboard the station. As the airlock cycled open, they fanned out into the corridors, weapons ready. "Romanov, get to that power core," Skora ordered over the comm. "Petrov, with me." They moved swiftly, following the schematics towards the heart of the station. But as they rounded a corner, a squad of Iridian soldiers spotted them. Plasma bolts filled the air. Skora and Petrov dove for cover, returning fire. Petrov dropped two with precise headshots. Skora unloaded on the rest, the confined space echoing with the roar of his railgun. "Keep moving," Skora urged as the last Iridian fell. "Romanov, status?" Static crackled over the comm, then Romanov's voice, tight with strain. "Ran into resistance, genetically enhanced soldiers, some kind of super warriors." Gunfire and screams filtered through the link. Skora and Petrov exchanged a glance. "Romanov, fall back if you have to. Regroup and—" "Negative, Captain." Romanov's words were punctuated by a blast. "We're close, we can do this. Romanov out." The link went dead. Skora clenched his jaw and signaled Petrov forward. They were close now, the command center was just ahead. The doors exploded inward as Skora and Petrov breached. Disruptor fire greeted them. They rolled away, taking cover behind consoles. Skora risked a glance. Zaxor stood at the center of the room, surrounded by his elite guard. Korvac was at his side, energy blade ignited. "Persistent, aren't you?" Zaxor sneered. "But too late, the Starbreaker is ready, and your pathetic assault ends here." "I don't think so." Skora rose, railgun leveled. "Surrender, Zaxor, it's over." Zaxor laughed, cold and cruel. "You've learned nothing, human, it's only just begun." He gestured sharply. His guards opened fire. Skora and Petrov scattered, pulse rounds stitching the air. Petrov took two down with a sizzling volley. but more poured in from side chambers. Disruptors flared, consoles detonating in showers of sparks. Across the room, Korvac lunged, his blade slashed down. Skora parried with his railgun, servos screaming. They crashed together, locking in a deadly embrace. Korvac snarled, mandibles flexing. "You should have surrendered when you had the chance." They spun apart, circling. Korvac attacked in a blinding flurry. Skora countered, armor-absorbing glancing hits. He fired point-blank. The railgun round tore through Korvac's shoulder. The Iridian staggered. Skora pressed his advantage, raining down blows. Korvac's defenses crumbled. His blade skittered away. Skora kicked him to the deck, planted a boot on his throat. "Stay down." On the far side of the command center, Petrov and Zaxor dueled. Pulse rounds and disruptor beams crisscrossed in a lethal web. Consoles exploded, smoke filling the air. Petrov ducked and rolled, avoiding a searing lance of energy. He came up firing, caught Zaxor in the leg. The Admiral roared, staggering. Petrov pressed forward, pulse rifle hammering. Zaxor's armor shattered. He fell, dark blood pooling. Skora leaped to the main console. The Starbreaker's activation code scrolled across the screen. His fingers flew over the keys, overriding the firing sequence. For a heartbeat, silence. Then a rumble built deep within the station. The deck shuddered, alarms wailed. On the view screen, a blossom of flame erupted from the power core. Secondary explosions ripped through the lower decks. The lights flickered and died. Skora hauled Korvac up, railgun jammed under his chin. "Order your men to stand down, it's over." Korvac glared, defiant to the end. But as the station quaked and tore itself apart around them, he slumped in defeat. "All units," he snarled into his calm, "cease fire, the humans have won for now." But even as relief washed through him, Skora knew this was just the beginning. There would be other battles, other weapons, other threats to humanity's presence among the stars. And he and his crew would be ready for them all. Skora's fingers flew over the console, desperation fueling his efforts to override the Starbreaker's targeting system. Zaxor's dying revelation echoed in his mind. Earth, his home, was now in the crosshairs of the deadly weapon. "Captain, we need to go," Petrov urged, his voice strained. "I can't let it fire on Earth," Skora replied through gritted teeth. "Get Korvac and the others to safety, that's an order." Petrov hesitated, torn between loyalty and duty. A warning klaxon blared, signaling the imminent lockdown of the command center. With a final, anguished look at his captain, Petrov nodded and led the team towards the extraction point. As the doors sealed shut, Skora found himself alone, the fate of billions resting on his shoulders. The Starbreaker's systems fought his every attempt to gain control, Iridian failsafes triggering cascading lockouts. Sweat beaded on his brow as he worked, the seconds ticking away like a doomsday clock. Earth's blue-green image filled a nearby display, a cruel reminder of what hung in the balance. Zaxor's malevolent laughter echoed from a comm speaker. "You've lost, human. The Starbreaker will fire and your world will burn." Skora ignored the taunts, his focus absolute. He rerouted subroutines, overrode security protocols, his skills pushed to their limits. Just as the final lockout fell away, a new alarm sounded. The self-destruct sequence, a last vengeful act from Zaxor. With precious seconds remaining, Skora input new coordinates, his hands shaking. An uninhabited world, lifeless and barren. The Starbreaker's targeting reticle shifted, locking onto its new destination. Skora slumped back, a grim smile on his lips. Earth was safe, but his own fate was sealed. The command center doors, fused shut by the lockdown, would not open. He was trapped. As the countdown neared zero, Skora closed his eyes at peace. He had done his duty. Humanity would live on. The Iridian station tore itself apart in a cataclysmic explosion, a miniature sun blooming in the darkness of space. The Iridian station disintegrated in a brilliant flash of light. On the bridge of the Odyssey, Petrov and the battered remnants of Skora's team stared in stunned disbelief at the expanding cloud of debris. No life signs detected, Ensign Sato reported, his voice heavy with grief. Petrov clenched his fists, struggling to maintain his composure. Skora, his captain, his friend, had Skripitsot ever refused to save Earth. The weight of that loss settled like a leaden ball in his gut. But even as they mourned, a faint signal caught Sato's attention. "Wait, I'm picking up something, a distress beacon." Hope surged through the bridge. Could Skora have somehow survived? Light years away, Skora drifted in the void, sealed inside a battered escape pod. Its systems flickered, damaged by the blast. He faded in and out of consciousness, his injuries taking their toll. Days crawled by in a haze of pain and delirium. Skora clung to life, his will unbreakable. He had to survive, to warn Earth of the Iridian threat. A thump jolted him awake. Voices, human voices, echoed through the pod's hull, the hiss of a cutting torch, then blinding light as the hatch peeled open. "Admiral Skora," a voice called out. "Thank God we found you." Gentle hands lifted him from the pod, carrying him to a waiting shuttle. As darkness claimed him once more, Skora caught a glimpse of the ship that had saved him, the TSS Valiant. Skora awoke to the sterile white of a hospital room, his body wrapped in bandages and immobilized by a regen field. A medtech stood at his bedside, eyes wide with awe. "You're back on Earth, sir. You've been out for a week." Earth? He had made it. A fierce surge of relief and joy washed through him, tempered by the knowledge of the battles to come. News of Skora's return spread like wildfire. The hero of the Odyssey, the man who had crippled the Iridian war machine and saved countless lives, had come home. Dignitaries and journalists clamored for his attention. Medals were pinned to his chest in solemn ceremonies. But Skora had little time for accolades. The Iridian threat still loomed, a sword hanging over humanity's neck. Intelligence reports painted a grim picture. The Iridians, enraged by their defeat, were marshalling a massive armada under the command of warlord Zathor, a being of terrifying reputation. Earth had to prepare, and fast. In a blur of activity, Skora found himself promoted to the rank of admiral, granted command of Earth's defense fleet. It was a staggering responsibility, the fate of his world resting on his shoulders. As Skora pored over fleet dispositions and strategy sessions, a message arrived that stopped him cold. It was from Korvac, his old nemesis, the Iridian commander he had battled and bested. Korvac claimed to have turned against his own kind, sickened by their cruelty and aggression. He offered to share vital intel on Zathor's plans and the weaknesses of the Iridian fleet, but he would only meet with Skora in person, on neutral ground. Skora stared at the message, his thoughts racing. Could this be a trap, or a genuine chance to gain an edge in the coming war? He weighed his options, the seconds ticking by. Then, with a heavy sigh, he made his decision. He would meet with Korvac and play out this gambit to its end, whatever it might be. The fate of Earth hung in the balance, and Skora would do whatever it took to protect his home. He gathered his team, Petrov and Romanov, men he trusted with his life. They boarded a swift scout ship, racing towards the rendezvous on a distant, barren world. As they entered the atmosphere, Skora's gut clenched. Something was wrong. The sensors lit up, detecting multiple Iridian signatures. "Ambush!" Romanov yelled, as plasma fire streaked past the view screen. Zathor's troops swarmed their landing site, weapons blazing. Skora and his team leaped from the ship, finding cover among the jagged rocks. They returned fire, their pulses pounding in time with the staccato of their rifles. But the Iridians kept coming, a relentless tide of armor and plasma. Romanov took a hit to the shoulder, his armor sizzling. Petrov dragged him to safety, still firing one-handed. Skora gritted his teeth, his rifle growing hot in his hands. They were badly outnumbered, outgunned. Was this how it ended? On some forsaken rock, light years from home? Korvac emerged from the smoke, a battered band of Iridian rebels at his side. "Skora," he roared, tossing the human a fresh rifle. "Fight now, talk later." Together they surged forward, human and Iridian, united against a common foe. Korvac was a demon, his blade flashing, rebel plasma scorching Zathor's troops. Skora and his team pressed the attack, seizing the momentum. The battle was fierce, brutal and short. As the last of Zathor's soldiers fell, Skora turned to Korvac, questions on his lips. But the words died as he saw the spreading dark stain on the Iridian's armor. Korvac stumbled, Romanov catching him, lowering him to the ground. "Knew it was a trap," the Iridian rasped. "Had to warn you." Skora knelt beside him, clasping his hand. Korvac's grip was weakening, his eyes losing focus. "Zathor's flagship," he whispered. "Weakness in the shields. Sent data." His hand slipped from Skora's and he was gone. Skora bowed his head, grief and gratitude warring within him. Korvac had given them a chance, at the cost of everything. Romanov groaned, his own wounds taking their toll. Petrov bandaged him as best he could. They had to get this intel to the fleet. They lifted off, leaving the blasted battlefield behind. As they broke orbit, Skora stared out at the stars, resolve crystallizing within him. Korvac's sacrifice would not be in vain. Earth's fleet gathered, every ship, every soul ready for the final stand. Skora stood on the bridge of his flagship, the data from Korvac loaded into their targeting systems. On the screen, Zathor's armada loomed, the warlord's ship a dark heart at its center. Skora's fingers tightened on the rail. This was it. Humanity's last hope. The fleets clashed, a maelstrom of fire and debris. Earth's ships struck hard and fast, Zathor's flagship their prime target. But the Iridians fought back with unmatched ferocity, their weapons carving through shields and hull alike. Skora watched in horror as a new Iridian weapon powered up, a pulsing darkness that seemed to devour light itself. It fired, and a third of Earth's fleet vanished, snuffed out like candles in a gale. In that moment, Skora knew what he had to do. He turned to his crew, his eyes locking with each of theirs in turn, a silent farewell, a final order. He wrenched the controls, plotting a collision course with the Iridian weapon. His ship leaped forward, engines straining, every scrap of power diverted to the shields. The darkness loomed before him, a hungry void. Skora whispered a prayer, a thanks, and a goodbye, and then he was among them, the black heart of the Iridian fleet, the maw of their terrible weapon. The impact tore through his ship, through his body, but as the darkness claimed him, he saw the weapon shatter, saw the Iridian ships reeling from the blast, saw Earth's fleet surging forward, seizing their chance, driving the invaders back. As the light faded, Skora smiled. Earth would live on. Humanity would survive. And though the cost had been high, though millions had fallen and cities lay in ruin, they had not fallen in vain. In the years to come, as Earth rebuilt, as life slowly returned to the shattered worlds, they would remember. Remember the fallen, the heroes, those who had given everything to defend their home. And chief among them, they would remember Admiral Benjamin Skora, the man who had led them through their darkest hour, who had shown them the unbreakable strength of the human spirit. His name would echo through the ages, a beacon of hope, a reminder that even in the face of the impossible, humanity would never surrender. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.